Hello, everybody. Today we are going to go over Acts chapter 23. Instead of doing some editing, although I usually do some editing, I'm going to try something slightly different. So instead of doing piano music in the background and prayer, I'm just going to show my prayer picture, and we're going to see how this goes. And of course, if it don't work out, I can always edit it and put the piano music to it or whatever. But I'm trying something different, and we're going to see how this goes. So let me get this pulled up real quick, and then I'll open us up to prayer. Sorry, this is taking me a minute. There we go. Kind of cheating and doing screen share, but in order to show my face in the video, I pulled up my camera so you can see me from that. And apparently this is not wanting to open up. Relax, come on. I'm trying to do something. Come on. You can get up here real quick. The dog just wants to say hi. She just wants attention. Yeah, if I go to kick her out and close the door, she'll just beg to come in. So, all right. So I'm going to open this up with a word of prayer. So, dear Lord, once again, I thank you for an opportunity to come and share your word with these people, Lord. Lord, and I just ask that as I learn more and more on how to do these videos and how to be more proficient, Lord, that you will just continue to show me how to do this and guide me and give me the knowledge that I need to be able to do this and to be able to make my videos better, Lord. And Lord, I know it's not about the views, but it's about reaching people. But I still want to do my best I can in both ways, Lord. But I do want to reach people, because spreading your word, Lord, is more important than those views or making a great video. So, Lord, I just ask that as we go through this chapter, Lord, that you will speak to us and that you will show us what it is that you want us to see. I ask this in Jesus' mighty name. Amen. Sorry about that, guys. Alright, so let me get this pulled up. So we're going to Acts chapter 23. And before we start with 23, I went back to 22 and I just kind of did a little recap for you. And I'm just going to read off, pretty much I'm just going to read off what I put up here. As soon as I can get to it. Okay, here we go. Alright, so Paul before the Sanhedrins. Okay. Alright, so we're getting ready. So Paul's getting ready to go before the Sanhedrins. But I went back to chapter 23 and I pretty much read 23 and I just did the best I could as to give you a recap. So this is what I got. So Paul spoke to the crowd that just tried to kill him. He spoke to them in their own language. So if you can remember, Paul was basically talking to the crowd, and they were trying to kill him, and the Roman soldiers basically took him to the leader because, he was causing an uproar, and he was getting ready to get flogged, and he tells them that he's a Roman leader, and basically he sees this as an opportunity to speak to these people again. So he asks to speak to the people again. So he goes back and he speaks to them in Arabic, in their own language, and got their full attention. Then he tells the people that he himself was a Jew and that he was not born in Jerusalem, but he was raised there in Jerusalem. He tells them how he was he was one of the biggest persecutors of Christians, and told them how he persecuted Christians, both men, women, and children. Sometimes to the point of death, other times he just put them in prison. He tells them how he encountered with Jesus, how he had an encounter with Jesus, and how his eyes were open, how Jesus appeared to him on the road to, I want to say Tarsus, but I don't want to say and be wrong. But anyway, about how Jesus met up with him on the road on his journey, and his eyes were open and he became a follower of Jesus. And as soon as he told the crowd, and as soon as he tells a crowd that the Lord wants him to go speak to the Gentiles, they got mad, because remember, the Jews, they didn't like the Gentile way. They wanted them to be Jews, and if they weren't Jews, they really didn't want nothing to do with them. So they got very mad and wanted to kill him once again. When the commander heard about this, what was going on, he brought Paul, and it was about, I think that was later, but they brought Paul to whip him until he found out Paul was a Roman citizen. When the commander found out that Paul was a Roman citizen, he said, okay, so I was a little backwards on what I told you. Paul did speak to the crowd after trying to kill him and all that, and that's true. And he got their full attention. And then basically got their full attention clear until he told them that he was going to go speak to the Gentiles. In which case they got mad. Once again, they wanted to kill him, at which point the soldiers took him to the Roman leader to see what was going on. They was getting ready to flog him until he found out he was a Roman citizen. And then from there, he decides to send him to the Sandedrans. So now we are in Acts chapter 23, where we are at Paul before Sanhedrin. It's verse 1 and 2. Paul looked straight at the Sanhedrin and said, "My brother, I have fulfilled my duty to God in all good conscience to this day." At this, the high priest Ananias ordered those standing near Paul to strike him in the mouth. So basically, Paul's telling him that he did nothing wrong, and Ananias gets mad about this, and he orders the people next to him to strike him in the mouth. Okay. So now verse 3 through 6. Then Paul said to him, "God will strike you, you whitewashed wall. You sit there to judge my according to the law, yet you yourself violate the law by commanding that I be struck." Those who were standing near Paul said, "How dare you insult God's high priest?" Paul replied, "Brothers, I did not realize that he was a high priest, for it is written, 'Do not speak evil about the rulers of your people.'" Then Paul, knowing that some of them were Sadducees and others were Pharisees, came out to the Sanhedrin. "My brother, I am a Pharisee, descendant from Pharisees. I stand on trial because of the hope of resurrection of the dead." I'm just going to read my notes. Basically, I can say the same thing in words. So basically, Paul called Ananias a hypocrite. And he is told by the people that Ananias was an important high priest. Now, Paul had no idea on this, or he wouldn't have basically called him a hypocrite, or at least spoke to him the way that he did. So he felt remorse and was, like I said, he was not aware that Ananias was a high priest, and he would never say bad things about high priest. Paul tells him he is a Pharisee and the dead will rise again. Now, here's where the differences came in. And I don't know about you, but me personally, I just have an understanding of what Pharisees and Sanhedrins were. So I decided, I didn't know about you, but I didn't fully understand what Pharisees. So I was a little shocked when I heard that Paul was a Pharisee, because we know the Pharisees are basically Jews that follow the Mosaic law, and the Gentiles were opposite. Now, Paul was a Jew, so I guess it shouldn't have been as big of a shock, but I was a little surprised, because we basically look at Pharisees and we think of them as hypocrites, that they didn't want to accept the way of Jesus, but they'd accept the law. So that's partially why I got a little confused. Now, Paul, and it would make sense, I guess, because he did follow the ways of the law until Jesus showed him the way, and he never really turned from the law, but he understood that Jesus came to fulfill it and not to abolish it. And some people that's where they had the differences. Some would believe that and some wouldn't. So I decided to look up what a Pharisee is, and it made perfect sense to me once I found out. So, Pharisee, it is a member of an ancient Jewish sector distinguished by strict observation of the traditional and written law, and I put in parentheses Mosaic law, commonly held to have pretension to superior sanctity, and another one it said was a self-righteous person. Now, 7 through 11, when he said this, a dispute broke out between the Pharisees and the Sanhedrins, and the assembly was divided. The Sadducees say that there is no resurrection, that there are neither angels nor spirit, but the Pharisees believe all these things, and I'll get to that in my notes. Here was a great uproar, and some of the teachers of the law, who were Pharisees, stood up and argued vigorously. "We find nothing wrong with this man," they said. "What if a spirit or an angel has spoken to him?" The dispute became so violent that the commander was afraid Paul would be torn to pieces by them. He ordered the troops to go down and take him away from them by force and bring him into the barracks. The following night, the Lord stood near Paul and said, "Take courage, as you have testified about me in Jerusalem, so you must also testify in Rome." All right, I apologize, guys. My dog needs to go out real quick. I will be right back. All right, I'm back. All right, so this was my notes. So we got the Pharisees and the Sanhedrins, and they had different beliefs on the dead rising again, basically saying once you die, your spirit goes up to heaven. So it is natural that they would argue about this. Now the Sanhedrins do not believe that the dead will rise again, but the Pharisees do. Jesus even speaks to this matter as seen in John 5:28 and 29, which reads, "Do not be amazed at this, for a time is coming when all who are in their graves will hear his voice and come out. Those who have done what is good will rise to life, and those who have done what is evil will rise to be condemned." So basically, even Jesus says, our human bodies are going to die, but our spirits are going to live forever. Whether, we believe in Jesus and follow Jesus and go to heaven, or we reject Jesus and go to hell, either way, we're going to be resurrected. Now, obviously, we want to go to heaven. We don't want the other part of that because, I feel sorry for those going south because that's not pleasant. So some other teachers of God's law from the Pharisees tell the Sanhedrins that Paul did nothing wrong. Now, Paul was basically just speaking the truth, but the Sanhedrins didn't believe this because the Sanhedrins were the ones that, I guess they want to follow Mosaic law more and didn't really want to follow Jesus. So now he's speaking the truth. And I apologize, I might say that wrong. But anyway, the Sanhedrins didn't think you would die and raise again. Now, I'm sorry, but if you don't believe that, I don't see how they can believe in Jesus, because Jesus is about life. Jesus is about truth. And they don't want to believe the life and the truth and the life after death. I'm sorry, how can you believe in Jesus and not believe that? So that's just my 2 cents on that. So this brought out a bigger argument. It got so heated that the leaders of the soldiers felt that Paul would get hurt and took Paul away from the people. Later, Jesus appears to Paul and tells him to do the same thing in Rome. I do believe that was when... because at the end here, the following night, the Lord stood near Paul and said, "Take courage, as you have testified about me in Jerusalem, so you must also testify in Rome." I don't know about you, but Paul had to be at least a little... Well, I don't know, because he wasn't afraid to die for the Lord, so maybe he wasn't terrified, but there had to have been a little bit of worry though, just to know that what he went through here in Jerusalem, that he's to go do the same thing in Rome. Who knows what the Romans are going to do? So now the plot to kill Paul. I'm going to go let the dog back in again real quick, guys, so I don't get sidetracked. Right, come on. All right, so I'm back. So verses 12 through 15. The next morning, some Jews formed a conspiracy and brought themselves with an oath not to eat or drink until they had killed Paul. More than 40 men were involved in this plot. They went to the chief priests and the elders and said, "We have taken a solemn oath not to eat anything until we have killed Paul." So they really want Paul dead at this point. "Now then, you and the Sanhedrin petition the commander to bring him before you and pretext to wanting more accurate information about his case. We are ready to kill him before he gets here." So they're basically plotting to kill Jesus, and they're plotting to basically, I said Jesus, didn't I? Plotting to kill Paul, and they're basically plotting a trick to get him to think that, he's going up to be questioned, and they're planning on killing him. So, and then I'm just going to read my notes. I know sometimes I'll say something, read my notes, and I'll say the same thing. I just look at that as it's important. So the people started to plot on how to kill Paul. They even made an argument to God. They were so focused on killing Paul that they even agreed not to eat or drink anything until he was dead. They were that dedicated to killing Paul that they said, until he's dead, I'm not going to eat or drink. It just shows devotion to what they wanted to do. This here goes to show how serious they wanted Paul dead. They even went as far as to go to the leader of the priest to tell them that they have agreed to kill Paul. That even asked to have Paul brought to them. They even sent out a trick to Paul to have him think he was brought to the Jewish leaders, at which point they were going to kill him. So basically, once again, they tell the Jewish leader, tell them that you want Paul, that you want to speak to Paul, and before Paul gets to you, we're going to kill him while he's on his way. So they knew about this. I'm not going to say too much more. I'm going to read scripture, but it's pretty interesting how the Lord works, and Paul basically finds out, or they find out, and basically Paul gets taken to safety, so this doesn't even happen. So verse 16 through 22. But when the son of Paul's sister heard of this plot, he went into the barracks and told Paul. That doesn't make sense. But when the son of Paul's sister heard of this plot, okay, so the son of Paul, so I was thinking his sister. Okay, so his sister's son, so it'd be his nephew. So his nephew heard of this plot, and he went into the barracks and told Paul. Then Paul called one of the centurions and said, "Take this young man to the commander. He has something to tell him." So he took them to the commander. The centurion said, "Paul, the prisoner, sent for me and asked me to bring this young man to you because he has something to tell you." The commander took the young man by the hand, drew him, and asked, "What is it you want to tell me?" He said, "Some Jews have agreed to ask you to bring Paul before the Sanhedrin tomorrow on a pretext of wanting more accurate information about him. Don't give it to them because more than 40 of them are waiting to ambush him. They have taken an oath not to eat or drink until they have killed him. They are ready now, waiting for your consent to their request." The commander dismissed the young man with this warning: "Don't tell anyone what you have reported to me." So basically, Paul's nephew heard about what the Jews were planning, so he went and basically told Paul what the Jews were planning. So Paul had one of the officers' soldiers take his nephew to the leader and tell the leader what the Jews were planning on doing. And Paul's nephew tells the leader about the trick that. So Paul's nephew tells the leader that the Jews are planning on tricking him, and we're going to Paul. Okay. All right. So now Paul's transferred to Caesarea. And I got a map of Caesarea, so I'm going to go ahead and pull that up before I start the reading. Where is it? Oh, there we go. Just 1 second, guys. Sometimes this computer's a little... Yep, there it is. Caesarea. I'm going to just pull it up so as I read and all that, you can see what we're talking about. Sorry, you don't want to see my face anyway, do you? There we go. All right, so there's a map of Sandedrans. So Paul's journey to Caesarea, Acts 23, 1 through 35. So it lines up with what we're reading. And we're at 23 and 24. Then he called two of his Sandedrans and ordered them, get ready to detachment of 200 soldiers, 70 horsemen. Now, okay, I'm going to discuss this later, but let's pay close attention to this. Then he called two of his Sanhedrans and ordered them. So get ready a detachment of 200 soldiers, 70 horsemen, and 200 spearmen to go to Caesarea. And then, like I said, we'll look at the map. At 9 tonight. So they were going to do this at nighttime. Provide horses for Paul so that he may be taken safely to Governor Felix. Okay, so their soldiers had, now this is my notes here. So their soldiers' leaders had to have his officer take 200 soldiers, that's a lot, 200 of them, to prepare that they must go to Caesarea at 9 o'clock. I might have got that from my easy reading, so let me look at that real quick. I don't want to just tell you that and not show you where I got it, or show you where I got it from. I've been using easy reading when I do my studying because it makes it a little easier to understand. So I'm just going to read 23 and 24 for my easy reading. Okay, 1 second. Okay, so 23 and 24 from easy reading. It says, then the soldiers' leaders took two of his officers to come to him. He said to them, tell 200 of your soldiers to prepare themselves. They must go to Caesarea at 9 o'clock tonight. So that's where I got the 9 o'clock at. 70 soldiers who rode on horsemen must also go. There must also be another 200 soldiers with their weapons. So that's 400, I'm assuming 470 soldiers altogether. 70 on horses, 200 with weapons, and then 200 to prepare themselves. And then they take some horsemen from Paul to ride, take him to Felix, the Roman ruler, and keep him safe on the journey. Okay, so now my notes. Well, I already read that. 70 soldiers riding on horse, another 200. Okay, so Paul's taken to Felix, the Roman ruler, and to keep him safe on the journey. And I put here's a map of Caesarea, which I already put. So here from Jerusalem, now they're traveling at night. Now, when I did my study on Paul or whatever, it said 25 miles a day. So this would have had to take in 2 days, but they said take them at night. So I'm not sure because the Bible's not being too clear, but I would assume it would have taken a couple days. That they started at 9 o'clock at night, and I would assume they wouldn't get there until 2 days later. And then I'm sure some came back because here's Jerusalem, here's Caesarea, Mediterranean Sea, just kind of give you an idea of where it's at. and 38 miles. What? Okay, now see, this is saying 38 miles to Antipas. This map might come in helpful or later, because we're going to read about Antipas later, so I might even pull the same map up later. And then from there to Caesarea is 26. So we're looking at 40, 60, about 65 miles. That's a lot. That's a far distance. Okay, I'm going to close that down. We'll come back to that, I'm sure, later. So now verse 25 through 30, he wrote a letter as follows. Claudius Lydius, to his excellency, Governor Felix, greetings. Now this is a letter to Felix from Claudius Lydia. This man was seized by the Jews, and they were about to kill him, but I came with my troops and rescued him, for I have learned that he is a Roman citizen. I want you to know why they were accusing him, so I brought him to their Sanhedrin. I found that the accusations have to do with questions about their law. I was informed of the plot to be carried out against this man. I sent him to you at once. I also ordered his accusers to present to you their case against him. I pretty much already told you, but here's what I put on my notes. The soldiers' leader, Claudius Lycia, wrote a letter to Governor Felix telling him that he is sending Paul to him because the Jews wanted to kill Paul and that Paul is a citizen of Rome. All right, so 31, I'm going to pull this map back up. I got another map I'll pull up after that, but I want to pull this map back up for you guys. Because Antipas is on here. So I'm going to pull the map up from Jerusalem to Antiochus, because I do believe some of this is important. And this is going to match up. Actually, I'm not going to pull up the other map, because this right here is pretty much what I wanted. I'll still show you the other map I got. Yeah, I got another map. I'll show you after this one. So 31 through 35. So the soldiers carried out their orders, took Paul with them during the night, and brought him as far as Antiochus. So from Jerusalem to Antiochus, right here, 38 miles. The next day, they let the cavalry go on with him while they returned to the barracks. When the cavalry arrived at Caesarea, okay, so that right here. So the cavalry went up to Caesarea, and it looks like they, what did it say? The soldiers carried out their order, took Paul during the night, and brought him so they brought Paul as far as Antipus right here. And it sounds like next day the cavalry went up with him while they returned to the barracks. When the cavalry arrived at Caesarea, so they delivered a letter to governor and handed Paul. Okay, so they took Paul all the way up to Caesarea, but they stopped. So remember, as I told you, that obviously it took more than one night. Let's look at this carefully again. So the soldiers carried out their order. They took Paul with them during the night and brought him as far as Antiochus. So I'm just assuming, now, if they did 25 miles a day, so maybe that math is wrong. But according to the Bible, I'm assuming in one night they traveled a whole 38 miles. And it could make sense. I mean, they were in a hurry. They had horses. So obviously they weren't walking, so they could go a further distance. So we're just going to say on one night they went as far as Antiochus. And then we're going to say they rested there for the night. For the day, because they traveled at night. So during the day they wouldn't do any traveling. Then the next day they let the cavalry. So at this point, the cavalry went with Paul, and while they returned to the barracks, when the cavalry arrived, so apparently from here, the next day, they went the other 26 miles to Caesarea, and they delivered to the letter of governor and handed Paul over. So they gave Governor Felix, Paul, the letter, and Paul, and the governor read the letter and asked what province has he from? What province is he from? So he asked, where is he from? Learning that he was from Cilicia, and I don't think I have a map of that, but that's okay. That's irrelevant at this point. He said, I will hear your case when your accusers get here. Then he ordered that Paul be kept under guard in Herod's palace. So he's basically saying, I'm going to hear your case, but I want to wait. I want to wait for your accusers to get here. This I'm a little confused because they were running from them, but here he's saying he's waiting for them to get there so he can hear their case. Bible brings a bunch of questions, and to me, that's a question that I'm just a little stumped on. So the soldiers took Paul from prison and took him to Antipas. So he went from prison from Jerusalem. He went to Antiochus, and I do believe they still kept him in prison because they were trying to keep him safe because they knew the Jews were trying to kill him. So here's a Bible note I got from Antiochus. Is 40 kilometers from Jerusalem. Now it says 38 miles. So let me see something. How many miles is 40 kilometers?
40 kilometers is equivalent to 24.855 miles.
Okay, so right there I'm confused. Well, then again, this is showing a straight shot. And I don't know. I'm confused. So anyway, but this is from a Bible note, and this is from a map. So we're just going off the information that we're given here. So Antipas is 40 kilometers from Jerusalem, and I don't know, maybe it was supposed to say 40 miles, or this is supposed to say kilometers. Either way, I'm really not sure. So we're just going to go with it. Hold on real quick. And I'm just going off a thought because said 40 kilometers was 24 miles. And if they travel 25 miles a day, so maybe, just maybe, this was supposed to be kilometers. And that would line up with some of my study. And if I'm wrong, I'm hoping comments are on. For some reason, some comments are off, some comments are on. Hopefully the comments are on. If they are, feel free to leave me a comment. If not, if you know me, you know how to get a hold of me. If not, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm still figuring some of this out. So Antipas was 40 kilometers from Jerusalem. This was a long way for the soldiers to walk in one night. Not many Jews lived between Antipas. Okay, so they're saying not many Jews lived in this area right here between Antipas and Caesarea. So after that night, the soldiers could return to Jerusalem. They did not need many soldiers to keep Paul safe there. So since there's not many Jews between here and here they didn't need as many soldiers. So a lot of soldiers made a journey back to Jerusalem at night. Now, obviously, it would have taken them 2 nights. And then again, from here to here, maybe this is where some of them went back, and ones with the cavalry that took Paul are the ones that went there, and the rest went back to Jerusalem. That very well could be the case. But this is just what my Bible note's saying here. So after arriving at Caesarea, they gave the letter to Governor Felix and brought Paul to him. Paul is questioned where he is from. Governor Felix tells Paul that he will wait for his accusers, the Jews, to arrive and listen to them and make a decision on that. In the meantime, Paul is put in prison. So that's all I got, but I did have another map, and Antipas to Jerusalem. Okay, so from here to here, and I'm going to go ahead and just show you this other map. Maybe it'll make sense to you guys, maybe it won't, but I'm going to share it with you anyway. Okay, so see, that's saying 50 kilometers and 40 kilometers. So we're getting, and this is a modern map, obviously, so things are going to be different. This is saying 10 hours, 54 kilometers, And I typed in from Jerusalem to Antipas. And this, I'm assuming, is Mediterranean Sea, which will line up with this other map here. So, okay. Well, let me do that. Well, okay. Well, dang it. I can't have, well, yeah, I can. I could minimize this one and pull this one up over here. And we have sort of a side by side. Yeah. So this would line up. Now, this I'm assuming is from the Bible. This is from today's time, and obviously it looks pretty similar. You know what I'm thinking, guys? And I could be wrong. This could be from Jerusalem always in Syria. Because that's what it's appearing to me, but maybe not. But anyway, I don't know if you guys can make any sense of this or not. But anyway, there's a Antipas district. And then here's Jerusalem. So A, Jerusalem. So this is Antipas, not in Syria. The center district of Israel. All right, so anyway, but those are the maps that I had for you guys. So that's all I have for this chapter. I hope you guys got an enjoyment out of that. Let me see. Okay, let me pull my little prayer thing back up, and we'll go ahead and close this thing out with prayer. I think this worked out pretty well because when I use my video editor, it causes stuff to lag. So I'm trying to find a way to bypass doing video editor. Plus it goes to show you guys that I'm not trying to hide or cut out anything I say, that you guys hear everything that I say, everything I go through the Bible as the thoughts pop in my head. And I'm just, well, I won't say watch my words because obviously I want you guys to know the truth. And as thoughts pop in my head, I'm just raw. You get raw. What comes in my head as it comes through my head. Nothing's getting cut out, so nobody can sit here and say, well, he cut this part out. So, and it's not just for that. Like I said, I want to show you guys the truthfulness because, like I said, I don't want to hide anything. And I think by editing, you know, obviously it's too easy that I could have, for instance, let's say I bash the Catholics, which, you know, I try not to, but let's say I say something about the Catholics or the Jews that, you know, I might think might be offensive and I'll cut it out. Well, by doing it this way, if I do say something, and there's certain things about the Catholics and the Jews, you know, I wouldn't say I agree with, but I'm not going to bash them over it. But anyway, just showing you guys that I'm just showing you live. Well, not live. It's going to be put up there. But basically, as I'm recording it, from the time I start the recording till the time I end the recording, now I might cut out the beginning part until the beginning part of the prayer or whatever. And then the end part after I say amen, I might cut it out from there. But anywhere between the starting a prayer to the end of the last prayer, you know, that's all going to be nothing cut out, as you see me taking my dog out and letting her back in. So that's kind of the direction I'm thinking about heading with this. And by doing that, obviously, you know, I could add the piano music and all that. But you know what? Although I like that and it just adds a humbleness to it, sometimes I think by doing that, that also could be a distraction. So this could be another way of just taking a distraction away from prayer time. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out with prayer. Like I said, I hope you guys get something out of this. Hopefully the comments will be open because I know there's two things like when I put it on YouTube. And now obviously if you're watching me on Facebook, you can clearly message me there. But on YouTube, I can do either for children, made for children, or not for children. I think when I do not for children, comments are open. I think when I select that it's made for children is when they turn comments off. I'm still learning on that, so if comments are available and you guys understand that, feel free to let me know because I'm still learning. So I'm going to go ahead and quit rambling now, and I'm going to close this with prayer. So, dear Lord, once again, I thank you for the opportunity to go through your word, Lord. And Lord, I just ask you that if I did, as going through this, if I did say the wrong thing in a few spots, Lord, that you'll forgive me for this and you'll let the people understand it. If I messed up, I messed up. But I want them to understand that I'm coming from my heart, I'm coming from my thoughts, and not all the time are my thoughts going to be correct. But I'm just going from my thoughts and I'm going from the Bible. And what I'm trying to do is go by what the Bible says. And I'm not trying to manipulate the Bible to say what I want to say by any means. But sometimes I might misinterpret the Bible. And if I do that, I do apologize. And I pray that if I do misinterpret it, that somebody will come on and say, hey, you got that wrong. Here's what it's supposed to be. And I appreciate the people that do that or will do that. Because I know there's a few spots here where I'm sure I've said the wrong thing, Lord. But I do thank you for the opportunity to share the word, Lord. And that, reading from the Bible, that's strictly from the Bible. And that's words out of your mouth. So once again, Lord, I just thank you for the opportunity, Lord. What you showed us through Paul's journey and what the Jews had in mind and all that. And that even when we come up with questions, Lord, that sometimes we need to accept the answer is because you said so. Or we're not meant to know. And I'll be the first to admit, Lord, I struggle with that because I want to understand some of this. And I just don't fully understand all that. And unless you show me what it is you want me to see, I'm just going to take it as I'm just not meant to know, or I'm not ready for it yet, Lord. But once again, I do thank you for the opportunity to spread the word, Lord, that I may not be the greatest YouTuber out there, Lord, but I'm doing your work, and that's what it's all about, Lord. So once again, I thank you for everything that you have done and everything that you will do. In Jesus' mighty name I pray. Amen. All right, I'm going to keep this on until it ends. So I hope you guys really got enjoyment out of that. It's going to take me 1 minute though. I got to get... shoot. Okay, cancel. I had it opened already. Okay, so I'm going to press stop record here in a second. But I hope you guys got an enjoyment out of that. And once again, like I said, if I did say something that you disagree with, that's okay. Let me know, because I'm not right on everything. And I wish I was, and I would love to be right on everything, but let's face it, we all make mistakes. I know a few spots, thankfully I've caught my errors a few times on there when I said them, because I want to do the work for the Lord, because I feel this is what God wants me to do. And of course Satan gets back there and he says, you're not going to say it right. You're going to say something wrong. So what's the point of doing it? You're going to mislead people. I don't want to mislead people, and that's not the intentions. I want to lead people to Christ. I want people to understand the Bible, and I know there's people out there that's watching us that understand the Bible better than I do. I've only read through the Bible from front to back maybe twice in the rest of my life. I've read bits and pieces of it, and I'm just now realizing that reading the Bible, it's not to be read as a book is to be read. Well, I know it's a hymnal, but anyway, just as the guy, not a book to be read from front to back, like a storybook. It's a book that's a living book, and when we go in depth and study, sometimes we can go from Revelation to Genesis and everywhere in between in the same study. It just depends on what we're looking at. And like I said, Scripture may say something to you one day, and the next day it'll say something totally different. So, all right, but I got to get off of here. So you guys have a wonderful day. I hope you guys enjoyed, and God bless.